Hello! So today is an exciting day because there's a bunch of new information that came out last night. Specifically all of the traits as well as the new augments and the charms, all the stuff that's in the new TFT set that's coming out in PBE, I think tomorrow or the day after. So this is going to be set 12. It's going to be released to the public in around 2 weeks. So I'm just doing the early prep if everybody's excited about it. I'm also doing a giveaway, so make sure to join the Discord if you want to enter that. There's details in a lot of the other videos on my channel. But today what we're going to go over is the new traits, because I think that gives us the greatest idea of what the units and how everything's going to synergize together, and we can start thinking about the boards a lot earlier. So basically we're just going to go through all of these. I'm going to read through them, give my opinion on it. I think there's released some videos as well on the actual TFT channel, so we'll watch the little videos to see how they look as units. And yeah, we'll just go over all of those, and then tomorrow we might just go over the units. They basically added like 150 augments as well. We'll probably go over that either a second video today or a video tomorrow, depending on that. But anyways, let's get right into it. So these are the new traits. So the first one, Arcana. So I read through this, I think, briefly last night, so bear with me if it's a little bit slower than usual. Anyways, use the Arcana signifier item to choose a high Arcana champion, and then Arcana's effect are based on the high Arcana champion. So it says it's only a 2 trait, which means you just put it in, and I think you get one of these effects, basically. It's the way I understand it from reading it. Ari, your team gains ability power for each 3-star champion. Hecarim, champions holding items reduce damage reduction. Tahm Kench, team gains health for each active trait. It's kind of like a jazzy vibe. And then Xerath, abilities deal bonus true damage for each charm purchased. So they each give you like a different buff. Like Ari's kind of like the reroll. Hecarim seems like a very tempo, like just like buff your whole board type of unit. Tahm Kench, giving a bunch of health is nice. It makes your board really tanky. So the fact that you can only choose one of them makes it so that you kind of have to decide. I think like every board, this is like the trait, because it's only like a 2 trait, you're probably going to always want to play Arcana. So if you're reroll, you always want to find a way to fit in Ari probably. Hopefully these champions themselves aren't too broken, because if it's a trait that it feels like you always have to play it. Because I feel like one of these is going to be useful for you no matter what. And it's only a 2 trait. It just depends how much of a buff these are. It doesn't say like how much damage reduction here, so we'll see exactly if they're worthwhile. But it seems pretty cool. Seems like a nice little Tekken trait. Arcana. Let's go to here. Let's see the video on it. So Arcana. Here we go. Let's look what they look like. So this is like the Xerath carry. Oh, these videos are loud. Sorry. I'll just mute these videos actually. Actually, I'll put a little bit of volume. Alright. I don't know. That's hard to say anything because it's not really showing like the buffs. It's just showing like a unit doing a bunch of damage. Whatever. Okay, Chronos. Chronos gains 15 ability power, and then it causes a countdown which speeds up by 1, and then you get a special effect. So basically there's like a countdown for every time they cast, and then I think the countdown carries over. Oh no, it's combat start. So each combat, so it's not something like scales infinite. It's like per combat. So 2 Chrono, you recover 20% health. 4 Chrono, you freeze time for non-Chrono. I don't understand what the freeze time means. Like if it just means like if it stuns, freeze time doesn't mean that it stuns, right? Freeze time maybe it stuns. I don't know. If it stuns for 2.5 seconds, that's broken, by the way. But I don't think it's a stun, because then it would just say stun. I think freeze time might just mean like maybe they stop generating mana for 2.5 seconds, like something weird like that. I'm not exactly sure. And Chronos keep fighting, gain 35 more ability power. The 35 more ability power is pretty massive if you have like casters, right? We'll go over some of the auxiliary traits, right? Like it seems like you have like a good 4-cost carry that probably does a bunch of damage. Maybe a 3-cost reroll with Vex. Vex is usually a caster. I think this guy, I don't know if Zillion's a frontline unit. It just shows that he has that Thieves Gloves on. It's hard to tell. But then Jax and Camille are probably like more frontline oriented. And then 6, Chronos gains 60% attack speed. 60% attack speed is a lot. It just depends how long this countdown takes. Because like if you have to build like a cast, you probably want to build towards casters. And it's kind of like a speed casting thing, right? Each second after casting. I guess maybe the freeze time might affect that a little bit. Let's see the Chrono in action. Okay, so Camille is a frontline unit. Zillion is a backline unit. Vex, they put Vex in the front line. Does that mean Vex is a frontline unit, or are they just like trolling us? That's pretty interesting if Vex is frontline. I don't see the countdown though. It doesn't look like there's a UI. Unless the countdown already hit. Am I crazy? Yeah, this is hard to tell. Maybe these videos are useless. We might not watch these videos as much. Because it just kind of shows the units going off. It doesn't really give us any information. I thought it would show like a countdown and stuff. I guess it doesn't. Dragons. Okay, so these ones basically like dragons just apply burning and wounding, right? There's basically 2 dragon and 3 dragon. This seems like a lot of utility. I feel like burn is basically anti-heal if you don't know. So having like a trait dedicated to giving you anti-heal seems pretty interesting to me. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to click. There's 2 low cost units, right? So if you have like an early Shyvana and Namzi, maybe you can make it work. I think Shyvana is a frontline unit, which is nice. So you have like a backline unit, frontline unit, and then they'll just apply burning and wounding. Smolder's the unit that if you saw some of the videos, he flies around in a circle, right? So if we go like dragon, you'll see Smolder. Smolder's a 5 cost though. But Smolder, they said that he flies in a circle and then he attacks the closest unit. So I don't know if he like retargets different units, but he seems like he does a shit ton of damage. Right? Like if you look at the Smolder, he's has like 1 item, he's just chunking everybody. So I feel like Smolder, especially with like having utility, especially if you don't build anti-heal until late in the game, it might be nice to just like tech in a Smolder on certain comps. Wukong's the interesting one. Basically Wukong has like a powerful ability and increased stats. I'm not sure exactly what the ability is for Wukong. I think it might change per game maybe. But you basically just tech in a single Wukong and you basically just get like an extra effect because of the Wukong. And that's like the Druid bonus, right? So I think it's a little bit hard to tell exactly what's going on here. I know there's a Wukong hero augment, so I've heard. So the thing with the Wukong hero augment, that might make Wukong like actually broken. Because you'll be playing around some unit that has like their own little buffs and traits. Like I said, it's hard to tell from these videos. As soon as we get some gameplay, I watched a couple like, you know, influencers and top level streamers had access to the patch already. So I saw a couple of things, but I didn't really see much, right? I didn't really see Wukong getting played all that much. But anyways, let's go to the next one. Eldritch. So Eldritch reminds me of Void. It depends how strong Eldritch is. Eldritch is like the summon trait, or that's what I like to call it. Basically, if your team loses 20% health, Old God awakens. I think it's so cool because I like Lovecraftian Eldritch style things. Like that's kind of like, you know, an art style or idea that I like used in media. So this trait kind of like has my interest of just being like cool to me or interesting to me. And it says that the Eldritch star level increased the Old God's power. This was a problem I had with Kayle in set 11, like the most recent set. Kayle wasn't like particularly incredible in terms of like she was good, don't get me wrong, Storyweaver was strong, but she didn't like scale that hard off of 3-star Storyweavers, right? Like I felt like it wasn't that noticeable and it wasn't that important. Like there was never like, okay, I'm gonna reroll Storyweaver specifically to power up Kayle, right? But that was something that was very, very, very important in Void in set 9. In set 9, as well as in a country in set 10, right? The previous sets before set 11 that I played. And I don't know if this one's going to be more like those sets. I think it will because Kayle isn't this Eldritch star level, this Eldritch beast. It doesn't say that the Eldritch beast is like buffing your team in any way. And Kayle did a lot of that, which would made her really strong. So I feel like in this case, vertical Eldritch might just be like, you know, you're playing towards rerolling or balancing the reroll between the two of them. As you can see, in order to hit 7, you kind of have to find a Nami and a Briar. Like these are your 5 costs. But I think all of the other ones are very low cost units, right? You have a Mordekaiser that's 3 costs, then you have 2 1 costs and 2 2 costs. So there might be a reroll comp where you're basically just powering around this Eldritch Beast. You're rerolling on level 6. And then after you play level 6, you just tempo level to try and find a Nami and a Briar later. And you cap out your board at like 8 or 9 with 7 Eldritch and some other extra units to support your team. Right? Probably like an Ahri. The thing is, Ahri, there's no scholars here. Right? Ahri's a scholar as her secondary trait to Arcana. And there's no scholars, so she doesn't synergize with the board nicely, but maybe there's like another scholar that you can make a board. We'll probably be live theory crafting boards tomorrow, by the way. I want to do it today, but it's a bit late. So I'm actually going to be like trying to make up some boards and see if they like end up turning out to be meta boards and stuff like that. So we'll see after. Anyways, next trait, Fairy. Fairies gain health and create special items. So this is like your Zon. This is like your Demacia. Like you get like special items for like the units. Your Ink Shadow, right? In the most recent set. So you choose a Fairy Queen, which gets a crown, and you can choose a loyal guard that gets a glamored armor. It's pretty interesting. So I don't know if the crown counts as an item. I think it surely does. Basically you get 100 health. Oh, we should watch the Eldritch and the other one, right? Let's watch Eldritch. I can't spell. Eldritch. Let's watch this one. Okay, so this is 10 Eldritch. So we're gonna see what it summons. I think this is the one that in the video, if you saw, yeah, it summons off the side. It looks so cool. Oh, it's like a... Wait, is that it? Oh, that doesn't look like it'll... What did that do? Wait, it only showed up for like 2 seconds. What? So it's stunned? Okay, that's actually really interesting, right? Because if all it does... Also, why is my recommended... if it just jumps in and it stuns... That's interesting. Like, if all it does is jump in and stun the board, I think it depends on if it stuns at 3 and 5. Because if 3 Eldritch just summons a beast and stuns, then Eldritch might be an interesting trait to just tech in. To, like, to just shove in, like, as a stun. Kind of like how Freylord was in set 9. So it actually makes me really, like, curious and interested in this set to see how it actually plays out. Because if it's not, like, an actual summon, and it just kind of, like, appears, like, and it does an effect and then goes away, then it might not be, like, a reroll angle as much as a tech-in kind of angle, right? Anyways, fairies. Let's look at the fairies now. Fairy. Okay, so as we can see that there's an item here, right? You can notice that this is probably the guard item, or one of these is the guard item. So we can see that, oh, this guy's diving the backline, by the way. Is that, I don't know which unit this is. It looks like Katarina, probably. Something like that. There's a Seraphine I see. Alright, so it actually is an item. It's not like implicit in the trait. Yeah, it was Katarina. So Katarina kind of jumps the back line as a unit, so that's pretty interesting. You have like a little bit of an assassin kind of unit, and probably like giving her like the guard or the crown, just buffing her damage. It might be like Katarina reroll, for example. This warrior trait might also matter, so maybe there's like a Katarina reroll 3 fairy warrior type of build. That's something that we might be looking at. Frost champions freeze the first enemies that die into allied ice soldiers, and then these soldiers gain 300 health per stage. So this kind of reminds me of like a ZZ Rot, because it says that enemies will prioritize attacking ice soldiers within range when retargeting. So they don't taunt, right? That's a big thing. When the ice soldiers are summoned, they don't taunt, they don't distract away from the unit, but you're prioritized when retargeting. So if there's like a melee build with this, so I already see Olaf has like this hunter trait, then maybe Hunter's like you know, we have Hunter, you know, like the manga with Twitch Olaf. There might be some kind of line where you play Vertical Frost and you're just playing around melee carries. Then something like Edge of Night is really big, because Edge of Night will cause the enemy to retarget, and then they'll get stuck on these Frost Soldiers. And these Frost Soldiers are kind of like ZZ Rots. They'll upgrade their health throughout the game, right? If you have multiple stages, they'll upgrade into to have more health, which will make them like kind of keep up with tempo. So this one might actually be really interesting, as like even if you're not playing Frost like for everything, but even like with a melee comp, because a lot of times like if you have like a melee unit, we'll see how it works out. Let's actually look at the Frost trait. But it's really interesting, because if you have something that forces you to retarget in one way, then you run into the situation where like if you have an Edge of Night, like it'll basically like retarget into the Frost champion instead. So let's see. This is like okay, this unit's diving the back line. This is exactly what I was talking about, right? So if you have like an Edge of Night on this unit, when she dives, that would probably retarget into these Frost dudes. You can see the summons, right? The little ice summons. That's actually interesting. So which unit is that? Is it Diana? Was that Diana? probably Diana, right? It wasn't Hui. Yeah, so Diana. But Diana's a 5 cost. Ooh, that's really interesting. Because then you can't really play around it very well. Unless you're playing like maybe like you really have to like play towards it. And she has Bastion. Bastion is usually an armor trait. We'll see that later probably. Right? So Fiora looks busted. Yeah, it says Edge of Knight's one of her best items probably. Yeah. I'm not sure. The other units didn't dive, so it's not as interesting to me. I think if like more of these were like assassin-y units, but the only one that seemed like they dove the backline was Diana, which is kind of unfortunate because it's a 5 cost, so it seems like you have to really you can't play towards it like early game in any way. Honeymancers! This one's the best. They're little bees. They're so cute. I love the bee skins in League. I don't play League, but if I did, I'd buy all the bee skins. Honeymancers summon bees, each dealing 10% of their damage dealt, and 2.5 as their damage taken as magic damage every 3 seconds. So this is interesting, right? Because not only their damage dealt, but it's also their damage taken, which makes me feel like the frontline units are probably more important, right? Because if you look at this, I think like Blitzcrank is a frontline unit, Kog'Maw might be a frontline unit, I'm not sure. Nunu's definitely a frontline unit. But I feel like the frontline units might matter a lot in this comp. So it might be like a reroll angle, because if you can soak up a bunch of damage, right? Because 10% of your damage dealt, a lot of times you're not dealing as much damage as you're taking. And especially with tanks, it can give you a lot of utility, right? But it is a big disparity, so it might still work with backline casters. It is interesting. This might be a reroll angle. I think bees might be like one of the reroll traits. I think they're talking about rerolling it already. I think it's designed to be somewhat reroll focused right there. Let's look it up. Honey Mancy. Okay, so Kog'Maw's a backline unit. So you have 3 backline units and only 2 frontline units. That's interesting. The problem is they don't synergize with each other at all. So I wonder what the comp is when you're playing these units. Vigor looks like a caster. They put casting items on Vigor. Interesting, interesting. And then you summon the extra bees. Every 3 seconds. It's actually very interesting. I feel like getting these stacks is so important that this might be like a reroll angle. I'm just not sure who the carry is. I've heard there's a Nunu reroll augment, which might be like, or a hero augment, which might be absolutely fucking busted. But I wonder if it's like a Vigor, because Vigor's a 3 cost, right? So it feels like you would probably want to just reroll the low cost units and then tech in a Vigor later. Which makes me feel like, are you doing a 1 cost reroll with this? I wonder if there is like another Incanters that can go with Ziggs, or another there's probably is another Vanguard to go with Blitzcrank. But it might be like, I don't know if it's a 1 cost reroll, but it's probably a 2 cost reroll. It's probably like play another Incanter and play around these units. Chrono! Or sorry, Portal. Oops, I misread it. I thought it was Chrono again. Portal. Create a portal. During combat, junk from other universes flies out of the portal every few seconds, helping allies and disrupting enemies. Portal strength increases by 1% for each portal's star level. Combat start, portal champion shield for 15 seconds. Okay, shielding is really insane. Because I think that makes them really tanky if you can tech in like a 3 portal. Because it works nicely as a frontline trait, right? Portal strength increases by 1% for each unit star level. So is portal a reroll angle? How much is 6 portal, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can't play 6 portal easily on a reroll, because you're gonna need a 4 cost and a 5. You're gonna need 2 4 costs, right? Because look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, you only need 1 4 cost, I guess. But none of them synergize with frontline, which is really awkward. It's really hard to play a vertical trait if you don't have an inherent synergy in frontline on your actual units, right? Like for example, if there were 2 bastions on the portals, then it would be really easy to justify playing 6 portal, because then you could just like play only portal units on level 6 or level 7. But here you're lacking any frontline trait. I guess portal is a little bit of a frontline trait, but it's just a little bit awkward, I guess. I feel like this isn't it's kind of awkward because it's like increase for each star level, but I feel like this is more of like a tempo comp, right? Whenever you have something where you have like 2 4 costs and a 5 cost, I feel like it's a lot more beneficial to create some kind of flex level 8 board rather than do like a reroll. Because I don't think 3 portal is really going to matter that much. Like I don't think a small portal increase for star level. Like maybe if you have an emblem, like if you have an emblem, this seems really good because then you could just play like this +1 unit and reroll on level 6, and then be 6 portal. So with an emblem, it might be a reroll kind of board. But I think it might be very flex actually. It kind of seems interesting if you can do both, right? Let's go portal. Okay, so we have Galio in the back line. So is Galio a backline unit or a frontline unit? Because Galio has Bastion, right? I thought Galio would be a frontline unit. I'm talking about this unit right here. Also, my quality is really bad. Actually, it's not. It's just the video buffering. Tarek has a frontline unit. Lots of armor and shielding. They put items on the Nora, which is like the 5-cost unit of this comp. So it's hard to tell exactly how much damage. But Ryze looked like he was going nuts as well. I remember Ryze being kind of crazy. Pyro. So Pyro looks kind of busted, no? Pyro champions gain attack speed and execute enemies under 15% health. So attack speed is kind of nuts. And then there's a second part to Pyro, right? Pyro champions gain an Infernal Cinder on each kill, and you can collect during your planning phase. Your team gains 3% attack speed. Your team gains attack speed, and 1% for every 4 cinders collected. That to me seems nuts. The reason attack speed in TFT attack speed is always really broken. The reason attack speed is broken is because it can be used by everybody, and it generally just helps damage output by a lot, right? If you have attack speed, casters, so units that like the only way to gain mana in this game is to either auto attack, so you gain mana off auto attacks, or to have some mana generating item in order to help you cast, right? So for a lot of units, like frontline units, melee units, a lot of times you're not making like a casting item, right? And you're also like melee units, they want to sustain themselves. So they want a lot of attack speed in order to generate like that Omnivamp in order to heal themselves, to out heal whatever damage they're taking. Backline units love attack speed because it helps them to cast, right? Because if you generate mana by doing more auto attacks, then, you know, sometimes you don't even need to waste your items on casting items. You might just be able to like cast a bunch just based on attack speed, right? And then some units that just like to auto attack, right? It's such a huge trait, and giving your whole team attack speed that scales makes me feel like maybe this is like a high cap board. Like there's only there's 3, and there's 4, right? Which is kind of interesting. And they also have an execute. I feel like a Akali reroll might be a thing, right? I feel like just with this setup, you play Akali Shen, right? They have generic augment. They have generic other things. So you should basically just pick like some other 2 costs and or 3 costs, but probably 2 costs to make sure that you're rolling on level 6, right? Shen is a frontline unit with Bastion, so you have a really strong frontline. Akali seems like a melee unit, so you just play around melee Akali. And then you can probably build like some kind of warrior build, right? Which is going to be all like melee units. And then if you 3-star Akali first and she starts scaling attack speed for your entire team, then you can push levels and get into other ones and play around these units as well. This guy's a backline unit though, right? Varus, he's like a bow user. Nasus or Nasus, I say Nasus. Nasus. It's probably Nasus. Nasus is a frontline unit. He looks like a frontline like tank melee unit. So it's kind of interesting. Like he's probably like a Gnar, like, you know, similar to that. I know Nasus is always like, or Nasus, I don't know how to say it. He's always like pretty, I remember in set when it was Shurima in set 9, he was one of my favorite units. The only problem I see is with Varus. Varus seems like he would be probably really insane with attack speed. You might be able to make like some hybrid build where you basically reroll Akali, and then when you level for Varus, he already has a bunch of attack speed because of the scaling attack speed that you have if you have a bunch of kills. So this one seems really interesting to me, and it also seems really broken. I feel like this trade is either going to be useless or it's going to be the strongest trade in the game. I think that's the way I see it. Because like if Akali reroll is actually strong, then this is just going to be busted. Because if you just scale attack speed and then late game you just like put in some 5 cost with like giga attack speed, I don't know, that sounds kind of nuts. Briar's funny because I said Briar might be like Ring Dragon of Raw. Briar deals 0.3% damage for each health missing. Okay, that's cool. 0.3% more damage for each health missing. So let's say you're missing 99 health. What is that? 99 times 0.3 is 33% more damage. 30% more damage. I don't know. It's gonna be hard to like time that perfectly. Each round, gain a light snack that compute for 3-player health. So you basically gain 1% damage in exchange for 3-player health. She permanently gains 150 when she eats it. I think it's 150 health, right? Briar seems very feast or famine. I think that if you're high HP and you hit a Briar early, it's busted. Because if you could just make Briar... it depends how strong Briar is. If Briar can like 1v9 by like sacking a bunch of your HP, that seems busted, right? No? Doesn't it seem like kind of crazy? But she is like Winged Dragon of Raw. I was saying it yesterday. I was making a joke, but she actually is, which is kind of cool, right? Because with Winged Dragon of Raw, you give him your life points in order to make him have more damage. And Briar's the same way, right? So each turn she can gain 150 HP. And I think one of these traits, like I think Shapeshifter scales HP, right? So we'll see that later probably. Relic, these are like the unique 5 trait ones. So Relic, Melia has a 40, 60, 100% chance to convert a temporary relic component into a real component. 60% on level 2. That's kind of interesting, right? Because if the temporary components, I think, are with the charms. So if you just can gain components, there's a lot of traits here that scale off components. I think Fairy was one of them, right? No, Fairy isn't. It's like the cake one scales off of it. Sugarcraft, this is the one I was thinking of. Also, we didn't look at Pyro, but I don't think there's a Pyro video. We'll check. Yeah, there's no Pyro video. Yeah. We'll see. Pyro to me seems the craziest because if Varus is strong, Varus with attack speed and execute, you might be able to just tempo level to 8 for Varus. I don't know. I don't want to talk about it much more. Okay, Sugarcraft. So I thought Sugarcraft was gonna be the fortune, you know, the econ augment where you just lose streak a bunch. Apparently there is no lose streak. There is no lose streak trait. There's only lose streak augments this set, which is kind of interesting because there's no like fortune set. Like there's no fortune units, right? Instead, you're just playing around like your boards anyways. I don't know how that kind of works out. Because I feel like it's the same difference. Like if someone hits like one of the Giga augments that just gives you a good cash out, I think it's still going to be really broken. And it just depends if those augments are broken. So I think it's like the same difference. But I think it just like makes it so that you have like less... I don't know how... I just don't know how the change is going to work out. It might make it so that there's like... With how many augments there are, it might make it so that there's so many less games where you're experiencing somebody in the lobby just like purposely sacking like Fortune. Which is interesting. It's an interesting dynamic. But Sugarcrafts, it's not an econ augment. Instead, they gain sugar for each item equipped, per like each component equipped, and then you basically just scale up this cake. So this is like one of those traits that even though it's not like it's not a trait, this is like a scaling trait basically, right? It's a scaling trait that scales off components as well as time in, because as soon as you get this 10 layers, you basically get increased damage and you get a special treat as well. So it's really interesting. You need a component to get to you need a spatula to get to 6 Sugarcraft, but 4 Sugarcraft is pretty hittable at a low level, right? Bard, Jinx, Rumble, Soraka. So it's curious if you could like it's curious. Gwen doesn't synergize well with these units though, is what I'm seeing here. I know there's probably like a Rumble. I know there's a Rumble hero augment we'll talk about tomorrow. That one might be kind of crazy because if Rumble is broken. This also scales, right? So having Rumble early is really strong. But I'm not sure if any of these are particularly rerollable to make. But I think Gwen is cool. I always liked Gwen as a unit because in set 9, Gwen was so cool because I think Gwen usually is like AP, and then like it's usually like a combination between like AP and like melee front lines, and I like those kind of units. I also like Gwen because I would be a top laner if I played League, and Gwen was pretty cool. Gwen as a design looks pretty cool. I liked her a lot in set 9. And finally, Witchcraft. So Witchcraft, which abilities apply a curse to enemies for 4 seconds. When a cursed enemy dies, the curse spreads to the nearest enemy. So cursed enemies become smaller, losing % match health. Then 4, they heal your Witchcraft units. They become frail, which they take bonus true damage from witches. And then 8 is the one that you need. You need two spatulas for it, so they become a frog. I don't know if Vertical Witchcraft is good, but I think Cassiopeia might be crazy. So Cassiopeia, I looked at her yesterday. We'll talk about it tomorrow or later today whenever I post the next video. But Cassiopeia, she gives like Bard vibes. Because when she casts, she starts doing bonus magic damage per every auto. So she seems like the resident Guinsoo holder in this set. Right? There's always like some unit that like you want to put like a bunch of Guinsoos on and just make them auto attack like crazy. So there might be like an insane Cassiopeia reroll line, which is something I'll try probably first thing in PBE, because that's like, you know, probably the most interesting thing to me. Morgana looks so cool, by the way. I don't know what skin this is, but you know, I played a little bit of Morgana against bots when I was filling support. Morgana's cool. I felt really sad because Morgana sucked in the last set. I felt like she was never really good. So I hope Morgana now is a 5 cost. She seems so cool because she looks like a frontline caster, right? Like she's a frontline unit in this set. She has like a 2 hex range, right? But she's like a frontline unit. So I always like my 5 cost. I love when there's like frontline casters or frontline damage dealers, right? Not necessarily like melee units like Yone or like sword users and stuff like that, but I love it when you have like some kind of giga tank that just does a shit ton of damage. Like the equivalent in set 11 is like Rakan, right? Like I thought Rakan was cool because Rakan just like randomly does a shit ton of damage, has really good synergies, and is just really strong in the front line. So I'm hoping Morgana is like the new Rakan, if that makes sense, right? Frontline giga damage dealer. There's also like what's it called, the Diana, which also can do that. Okay, classes. So these are like the lesser traits, but like they're still play aroundable ish. We're gonna go over these a little bit quickly, and then this will be like the end of like the overview video that we're trying to make here. Oh, I didn't show mages here. Oh, and Sugarcraft. Let's go Sugarcraft. Alright, so Gwen, frontline unit with a dual gauntlet. So Gwen is probably going to be, like I said, an AP melee user, which is pretty cool. She looks like she's just doing her snip, snip, snip. I don't know, I think Gwen's cool. We have backline units, Bard putting I don't know if these items are any good. And then, what's the next one? The last one is Witchcraft. Oh, we also have, this is probably like one of the skins that are available, which is pretty cool. Oh, look at this. That's like a motorcycle, like Bat Out of Hell. Alright, so this is like 10 Witchcraft, right? They're just showing like the Giga Vertical. And then we have Poppy, which is a 1-cost frontline unit. That's pretty interesting. And then Morgana's also in the front line. We didn't really see much, right? Did they turn into frogs at least? Yeah, I think somebody turned into a frog over here. Yeah. Nico as well. Pretty interesting. Alright, so that was all like the video stuff. Now let's just go over the last couple of traits. Ascendant, so this is Xerath exclusive. So Xerath makes Ascendant charms show up in your shop. I think that's busted, right? After each combat, your odds of seeing one increase 10% up to 50%. When you buy one, your odds reset. So this seems crazy if you hit a Xerath early, right? Because Ascendant charms are just like giga busted charms. And the charms is like the main mechanic that you can buy them in your shop and you gain like some extra battle stats. They usually last like 1 turn, but sometimes it can be like get an item anvil or get a component anvil or get a duplicator. But this is like difficult because well, actually Ascendant is a solo trait, so you just need a single Xerath to play. And then Xerath is also Arcana, which you probably want to always play Arcana anyways. So I feel like the set, if Xerath is actually useful, like is actually like a good unit this set, I think Xerath is going to be the most contested unit by far. Like, by far. I think whoever hits a Xerath is, like, in a good spot, right? Because if you're able to make Ascendant charms show up, and Xerath has the trait where it's the Arcana trait that I said you usually want to tech in somehow, right? Either if you're playing Reroll, you want to play Ari, right? If you're playing anything else, you're probably playing Hecarim or Tahm Kench. So you always want to play 2 Arcana. So this is probably, like, your go-to secondary Arcana unit. And then they just happen to just give you, like, it won't be good if the unit is trash, right? If Xerath is like a negative fawn, if you're just playing a unit for the sake of like hopefully hitting a good charm, I feel like that's a little bit troll. But if Xerath is actually like strong, they're easily the best unit in the game, right? Clearly, like, at least to me it seems like pretty obvious, right? Bastion. So Bastion is like the armor trait, right? Yeah. So allies gain 10 armor and magic resist. That's interesting. And Bastion champions get more increased by 100% for the first. So they've doubled for the first 10 seconds of combat. This seems insane. It seems really good because it's a 2 trait that gives your whole team 10 armor. So it's basically like Altruist, right? The way you can look at it is like Altruist, but instead of having that ragtag, your Altruist heal bonus damage, which was really fucking useless in set 11. Altruist was still really strong, but this is like always having a 2 Altruist. But the extra armor is good. It's just nice to have armor on the whole team, and then they basically have 30 armor for the first 10 seconds, right? And then if you have 4 Bastion, they have 90 armor for the first 10 seconds. That's a lot. That's a lot actually, right? Because if you have like a really fast comp that like does damage really fast, so I think Bastion is like the go-to frontline trait probably. Unless like unless the units themselves are very weak. But I think like, you know, if you're going like a reroll angle especially, right? Like a Poppy reroll, right? You could probably reroll Poppy with Nunu, right? Because these look like decent frontline units, right? Shen, if you're playing Pyro and you need an extra Bastion, there's lots of like low-cost Bastions available. And then it also caps out really high with a Diana, right? Because if you play Diana and then Diana's Bastion frontline unit that you can play with Frost, and the Frost units, there was like 2 melee units in there as well, remember? And Frost gives you like the extra non-targetable units, and the non-targetable units probably also gain 10 armor, unless they don't count as allies, which I'm sure they will. It doesn't say champions, it just says allies, so that they also gain armor because of Bastion. I don't know, it looks like a really strong build. And then you have your go-to 4 cost, probably tank, something like that. Bat Queen. When Morgana's bats kill an enemy, they have a 45% chance to abduct it, granting a 1-star copy of them or one of their item components. So this is crazy because this is like Lysandra, right? So Morgana looks busted as shit. That looks really good. So you get a 45 chance to abduct it. So that means you get a 1-star copy of it, which is really insane if she kills a 5-cost unit, right? So this might be a positioning matters kind of thing. You might want to put your Morgana like toe-to-toe. Like, let's say there's a Morgana against a Diana, right? Then you can just farm 5 gold, which is insane. Or you can farm a Diana if you need a Diana, right? Because you can basically, like, farming the high-cost units is going to be more important than farming the low-cost units. But one of their item components is also insane. That reminds me of Kiana in set 10, if you guys played set 10, right? Farming a component, then it becomes also positioning. So Morgana is like a positioning frontline monster, right? You want to put her in front of a unit that you either want to either abduct or gain one of the items. And the thing that's really nice is that usually the units that are itemized are good units, so they'll have good items on them. So both of these work out nicely. And you want to try and, like, you know, you have basically like a 50% chance of getting gold or item drop, right? The component is way better, by the way. It's probably like worth 5 gold at least, unless you really need that particular unit. Blasters gain bonus damage for increases for 3 seconds after casting their ability. So they just okay, that makes sense. So this Varus might be really strong then, right? Because it's only a 2 trait and you gain bonus damage. So Varus has attack speed, bonus damage, and an execute built into their traits. As long as Varus is not like an absolute trash unit, I think Varus is going to be a good backline carry, right? It just comes down to if Varus actually does damage or not, because the traits are amazing on Varus, right? You have attack speed scaling, you have bonus damage that increases after casting, which you want with Varus. It lasts for 3 seconds after casting their ability. Imagine if you can fit like a 4 blaster, 4 pyro, like holy shit. And then it just scales attack speed, so you have like you'll basically have constant uptime of your extra damage. Oh boy. And Rumble's a frontline unit, so you're not even in a bad spot. It's probably pretty easy to fit in 4 blaster. I think this Rumble unit's gonna be a nightmare. Rumble is Sugarcraft, which scales, Blaster, Vanguard, as well as you can play it with Pyro because it fits in nicely, probably because of Blaster, right? And there's a hero augment for Rumble. Like I said, it all comes down to like the units themselves, right? Like this Varus has really good traits, but if Varus does like 1 damage every time he attacks, it's like, yeah, okay, shit, you know, that's not good. Explorer, Nora summons Yumi, who can attach to allies by hovering over her. Okay, so this seems like Yumi casts at the same time as Nora. She shares her HP. So this seems like faded a little bit. And then I guess it just does bonus damage, right? Like the Yumi, you attach the Yumi to like maybe your frontline unit, and Yumi does like Yumi things, either healing or damage. It depends what Yumi actually does. I don't know if Yumi just casts. I think Yumi just casts, right? She just casts along with Nora, so I think it's just bonus damage. It would be crazy if Yumi was like Yumi in League, where Yumi like heals the units as well, because then this would be insane to just like throw in on like a melee board, if that makes sense. Nora's also Portal and Mage. We haven't seen Mage yet, so hopefully we see Mage soon. Hunter. So this was one I was looking at, right? This was like the Olaf and Twitch. Hunters gain attack damage increase the first time they get a takedown. So this is like a feast or famine kind of build. And you actually have backline units and frontline units. So vertical Hunter is pretty possible, right? Like you have like a decent spread. I think this set, what I'm noticing is that the thing that I hated the most, I say the thing I hated the most about set 11, but I say that a lot. But there's like a lot of things that I really didn't like about set 11, which isn't like to say it's not fun, right? I obviously can say all the things I love about set 11, which I talk about all the time. I obviously made like a video every day for the past like 4 months on it, so I obviously enjoyed myself, right? But something I didn't like was that there wasn't many traits where you can mix and match like AP, AD, and play towards like frontline, backline, like a melee frontline unit and a backline AP unit. But it seems like there's a lot of vertical comps this set that have that in it, right? At least a lot more on, like, obviously we'll see how things shake out when we actually play the set and when the set actually gets balanced and stuff like that. But it seems at a first glance, more so than when I was looking at set 11 at a first glance, that there's a lot more comps that are like that in this set, which makes me really excited. Incanter, your team gains 10 ability powers. So this is like, what's it called? Arcanist. When your Incanters attack, they gain stacks of ability power up to a max of 20. Attacks grant 1 stacks and casts grant 3 stacks. So max of 20. And then 2 and 4 only makes the stacks go more. So I said Cassiopeia is probably your resident Guinsoo holder, and I think that's right. So if she's like your resident Guinsoo, oh, and Siobhan and Syndra as well. Oh, and Karma, I don't know how Karma works. And then Ziggs. This is interesting, because the stacking isn't that crazy, because it's like 1 per attack. So if you make like a Guinsoo Cassiopeia, she'll just stack instantly and have a bunch of AP. There's like a Radiant Guinsoo augment now, which just basically turns all items into Guinsoos. And I think that will be really crazy with like a Cassiopeia reroll. I think if you have Cassiopeia reroll, you Cassiopeia Syndra, as well as some other lines. I'm going to call it the Fenrir comp. I'm stapling it now. The Fenrir comp. Cassiopeia Syndra reroll. And it's with the Guinsoo item augment, where you just like stack, where you get all your items turned into Guinsoos. That's a real augment that's coming out. We'll talk about it some other time, right? And I think you just play 2 of these, and you just play like some frontline units. Mages echo their abilities. Wait, is that like multicasters? Wait, there's multi-strikers? They attack twice? Oh my god, that's so... Okay, whatever. Alright, mages echo their abilities, have total modified ability power. So 75% ability, have modified total ability power. So you echo your ability, but you have less ability power. This is the way I don't know if it's less ability power on the second cast, because echo just means that they're probably gonna cast twice, and that's probably broken, right? A balancing nightmare. But this goes like up to like whatever. I don't know if this 75 means that their ability power is cut by having the trait in, because then that seems kind of whack, or if it just means their echo is cut in ability power. But it's probably just their echo, right? Like it can't be like they just lose ability power. That would be kind of bad, because then you'd have to just play vertical. It's interesting. There's probably some sort of reroll here, right? The problem is it has to be 5 multicaster. Galio, I don't know if Galio, I see Galio in the backline in some of these comps, so I don't know if Galio is the proper frontline unit, but none of these look very frontliney, right? Seraphine, Nora, Vex, like we saw Vex in the front line. I think they're just trolling in those videos. Nami is usually a backline unit. Like if you have a frontline unit, 5 is possible. If you don't have a frontline unit, 5 is very difficult to fit in, right? We'll see. Okay, multi-strikers can attack twice. So reroll Akali is seeming pretty good if we have like a nice multicaster that can fit in, which we have Ashe. So Ashe is also Eldritch, and the other Eldritch is another damage dealer, right? Another warrior. We haven't seen warrior yet, right? Actually, we've seen Warrior. It's like the damage thing, right? No, Warrior's after. We haven't seen it yet. Hecarim's a multi-striker. That's kind of nasty. Hecarim has no business being a multi-striker. So maybe you don't even play Eldritch with this. You might. I don't know if Akali reroll what it's gonna be, but it's probably gonna be like Hecarim Ari, right? I'm focused on Akali reroll. I think that's gonna be pretty meta. Sorry, my music stopped. This is interesting. And then you have a 30% or 45% chance. The problem is a 3 trait, so it's probably play both of these, right? And then Callista is Fairy. And then you have a 5 cost, which is Camille. Camille looks like a frontline attacker, which is pretty interesting. I don't think 7 is going to be easy to hit, but healing 2% on every attack is kind of fucking nuts. Imagine if you have 7 multi-striker Akali 3, and every time she attacks, she heals 2% of her max health, and she's Pyro, so you're scaling attack speed on your whole team. I don't know. Some of these synergies look like, on paper, like, it looks broken, but, like, this requires a lot of work, right? Because 7 multi-cat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It requires all of the units, right? So you have to, like, be high level. So you're probably not going to be playing all of these. Anyways, we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. Preserver. So your team heals for a % of their maximum health every 3 seconds. If they're full health, they restore mana instead. That's interesting. So Morgana's Preserver. You have they increase by 1 each time. So you have 2, 3, and 4, and then 5 needs an emblem. This is probably an uncraftable emblem, and it's probably one of those like, Giga things. This is pretty nice. You have Bard, Cake with Preserver. That's pretty cool. They're all like high cost units though, right? Zillion, I don't know what Zillion is as a unit. So I'm not entirely sure how Zillion is gonna work out. But we'll see. Scholars gain bonus attack per mana. So this is like your it's not that Zoe. It's probably like a Zoe reroll angle, right? That's the thing I see in Rise. This is like Invoker. So it's just like a lot of these items will have like specific mana thresholds you have to worry about. Makes sense, you know. Nothing crazy. There's no like 6 Invoker. There's no 6 Scholar easily, right? So you're stuck with that. Shapeshifters. They gain bonus max health. This is what I was talking about. So Briar scales with HP. That's what I mean by an early Briar. If you can, like, instead of using the Briar that scales just damage off of your lost player health, if you can actually feed the Briar by having her early and every turn you feed her and sacrifice HP, it might turn into like something really broken if you play something like 4 Shapeshifter Briar, right? Especially if you do like an Eldritch reroll. There might be an angle here because Elise and Briar, see, they share Eldritch together. So you can easily fit in Eldritch, and then if you already have like a 3-star roll up, and then you like tempo level, you have a bunch of HP because you rerolled, so you scale, and then you find an early Briar, you tech in Briar, right? Then you give her a bunch of HP. Might be interesting. We'll see. It all depends what this Eldritch does, right? How important it is to have 3 stars with Eldritch. Nico, that's Witchcraft. Shyvana, that's Dragon. These are all interesting. Nasus or Nasus. Jace. I don't know much about Jace because it looks like with Portal you get shielding. So every time I see Portal units, I'm thinking like frontline, but I'm not sure who's actually frontline and not. Vanguard take 10% less damage. So Shapeshifters is like bruisers basically, right? Shapeshifters are bruisers. And after they cast, they triple their effects. So this is like your bruiser build. So these are probably all like frontline units, right? These are all like all your bruisers probably. And then Vanguard is like the Guardian slash I don't know what they call it this set. I don't know what they call it in set 11. I forget. Maybe it is just Guardian. Vanguards take 10% less damage when shielded. Combat start. And at 50% health, they gain a shield, which is percent of their max health. Okay, so this is just like you take percent less damage, right? Because there's always an augment that gives you armor. There's always one that gives you armor, a trait. There's always one that gives you HP, and there's always one that gives you percent less damage. And then Warrior. Warriors gain Omnivamp and bonus damage. When Warriors drop below 40%, the bonus damage is doubled. Alright, so Warrior, probably a 4 Warrior build is pretty good. This is like your go-to melee. There's only 5, and it caps out at 6, which kind of sucks. So you probably want to drop one of them. Nyla's a 2-cost Eldritch. So maybe you can reroll Eldritch with like a Kali, like I was saying before. Fiora looks like Witchcraft, right? So Witchcraft, and then there's Fairies. It's a little bit difficult, right? We'll see. Anyways, that comes to all the traits. So thoughts so far. I think the traits are really interesting. I'm actually really excited. A lot of them seem really fun. Not in the sense that it's just like new fun. I feel like there's a lot of things where I'm like really actually genuinely curious how they work and genuinely curious about the units and how they fight on the board. There seems to be a lot of like interesting traits, right? A lot of these traits, they might seem very similar to other traits, but they seem like, you know, curious how they will work out in terms of the mechanics of the set as well as the other augments, right? You have a lot of scaling augments as well, right? You have like the sugar one that scales off components. You have the pyro one, which I'm really curious about. That's like my big one that I want to try out, right? You have all these ones that like they have like extra effects or summoning, and the classes are also very interesting, right? If you're not just thinking about like the straight up traits. So I'm actually very excited about this set. I wasn't super excited about the set mechanic, but I think the unit quality that I'm seeing, like the creativity of them, is so much higher. I'm not trying to compare or say like anybody's doing like good or bad job. What I'm saying is, to me, for me personally, the amount of interest that I have in the units is so much that I am very excited for the set, even though the mechanic of the set, like the overarching mechanic, I'm not super thrilled about. But obviously I have to see how everything shakes out. This was obviously a long video. Thank you all for watching and sticking around. If you like this type of content, these are very rarely at the beginning of the set, but usually my channel is mostly just guides as well as VOD reviews in order to like go over videos and improve, and I do daily uploads and all of that. So thank you for all sticking around if you stuck around this far, and hopefully you guys are as excited as me. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.